Hello, my name is Timothy Guy. I am an 8th grade math teacher at Spring Grove Middle School. Some of my hobbies and personal information. I'm a big fan of movies. I'm really excited about the Star Wars movie coming out in December. I just released the title the other day, so it's exciting. I also like to play a lot of games, different board games and things. And some personal information about myself. I have a wonderful dog. Her name's River. She's a corgi mix. You can see her down there in the little picture. And then I also am expecting a baby in May with my wife of a few years now. So we are very excited for that. We're having a little girl in May. So some exciting things going on in my life right after this course is over. Some of the online experience that I've had so far, I've taken one grad class that was half online and half in person. So it kind of was like a mixed format. So I'm kind of used to going through D2L and the modules as well as we had to come into class and discuss some things and do some other things in class. Also, in terms of online teaching, in my classroom at Spring Grove, we have a one-to-one technology mandate that's out there, initiative. So all of our students have an iPad. So because of that, I've tried to implement a few different either flipped classroom experiences or more individualized student experiences using iPads that would be similar to an online experience. For example, right now I actually have a group of students in my pre-algebra class who are way above some of the other students in the class. So they're kind of working through almost like an independent study through our Schoology app that we have of things that I've set up that would be very similar to an online teaching experience. The questions that I wanted to answer, the first question was about whether I agree with the fact that good teaching is good teaching, whether it's online or in person. And first, I think there are some things that make sense for that comment. As long as you are doing student-centered teaching, I think that is kind of the key to good teaching no matter how you're teaching, whether it's online or in person. I think those are things you can foster in either environment. Engaging activities are another thing that's really important no matter where you're at, whether you're teaching online or in person. I think those are things that both the online format and the in-person format can implement, and it makes it so that students are involved in your classroom and you can get some good learning outcomes from that. The other one is just a high level of content. You know, as a teacher, I need to make sure that my standards and my content knowledge are high, and that I'm holding my students accountable for that and keeping that content or that rigor high as we're going through. And I think that online or in person, you can have that high rigor and those things that you need for your students to succeed. There are some things where I think that it could kind of fall apart, and that's something in this course I guess we'll see as I learn more about online teaching. But I kind of worry about, number one, the student interaction. Not even just the teacher to student, but more the student to student. When they're working on a math problem online, I don't know how possible it is for a student working at his own pace, doing his own thing, to really check with another student and see what they're doing, if they can help them. I know in my classroom, I feel like students have that kind of magic ability to explain things to each other. Even if I explain it to them, they don't, they might not get it the first time from me, but for some reason when a student explains it, all of a sudden it's like magic. They can get it. So, and I think that's something that could be missing from that online component. Another thing is the teacher-student connection. You know, how well as a teacher can you get to know your students? Especially, when you hear about the online classrooms where teachers have, hundreds of students at a time, and you have to kind of individualize everything. I wonder how easy it is to do that and how much of a connection you can make with each student when you're not really having those one-on-one conversations in person. The last one is the student accountability issue, and we'll kind of talk more about this later too. But with student accountability, how can you keep students on task when you're not with them, and how can you make sure that they're doing all the assignments you want them to do? I know I've heard like the horror stories of teaching online, and you have those students who disappear and never show back up again. How do you make sure that you're holding those students accountable like you would in the classroom? Because obviously in the classroom, when it's in person, you would never be accepting of a student not doing their work or not showing up or whatever, whereas in the online classroom, that could be a hard thing to take advantage of. Question two that I want to answer was which problems that I wanted to learn more about, and some of that goes into even that question one, the things that I questioned that I wasn't sure whether they were going to be good teaching for online, and a lot of that is the student issues that were discussed in the article, the third problem they came up with. The students, again, who do nothing and disappear, what do you do about them? How do you make sure, how do you get them back? How do you make sure that that doesn't happen? How do you do that when you're not with the students, you're not seeing them physically, and they might not have, the parent structure at home to make sure that they're participating in the online course. The other thing is the connecting with students. Again, another thing, a question I kind of had from whether it was good teaching or not. A lot of the teachers who taught online in the article expressed some concerns of being able to build those personal connections with their students. And I just wonder how you can do that, or what's something that you could do in order to build that connection. Obviously, in my right now, my situation, I'm not doing straight online education. So when I do those sort of flipped classroom experiences, I already have connections with my students. But I know as a district, we are opening up our own cyber classes, and they've asked teachers who want to teach a course or two. And it would be interesting to see how you could still build that connection with students who might not be physically in the room, and still get them to be engaged and want to do the work, and not end up like those first students I talked about, the ones who disappear. And also just the technology reaching students. How can you help train the students in what the technology is? How can you adapt it to what their needs are? And a lot of that, again, goes back to connecting with the students and there's other things we've discussed earlier, and I just want to know more about how you can do that through an online platform. Looking at some of those commercials, kind of wrap everything up that we looked at and comparing them to the standards, I kind of noticed that most of the standards that were emphasized in the cyber school commercials were definitely the student-centered standards. So some of the things from Domain 1 in those list of standards, such as the student-centered instruction, was said like over and over again. This is for your student leads the way, your student gets to adapt what's going on. I also kind of highlighted the collaboration between stakeholders, as in they talked to how the teacher talks to your specific student to see what they need. The teacher and the student work together to come up with what's best for them. Those sorts of things they really emphasize on. Again, all the really teacher-centered or the student-centered objectives were definitely highlighted. As well as, again, kind of a continuation on that, the Domain 3 from the standards, the adapting to the students. Taking whatever we're doing and adapting to the students, that's something that was big in the standards in Domain 3, and they really emphasized that. Some of the things that were not standards that they definitely emphasized were more of the kind of corollary like cost things, such as, it's tuition free, you don't have to pay tuition, or, hey, you get to choose to come here, so it's your choice to come to the school. It's kind of like going to a private school sort of thing. So those are definitely some other things that were shown in the commercials that didn't have to do with the standards. So that's kind of what I've seen so far. So my questions that I have about online teaching, some of the things I like and dislike so far. But I'm definitely interested for the rest of this course getting to learn more about what these schools and what these online things can offer, and how best to implement them when it is a situation where it might be the best choice for a student.